over the last year through June. But as many stretch their budgets, you probably don't need the government to tell you that. One solution for millions of young adults is to move back home. CBS News national correspondent Jerika Duncan explains.
34-year-old Carly Goodrow appears to be in great shape physically, but financially, it's been a struggle.
This one is just super relatable.
The business coach and content creator has been documenting the ups and downs.
I am 34 years old. I just moved back in with my parents for a few months with my 2 golden retrievers.
So this is the room.
This is the room.
And then this is the workspace.
This is my office. It looks terrible right now.
When you think about what you imagined for your life at 34, was it this?
No, definitely not. What are you doing?
Before moving back home, Carly says she was living with her boyfriend in South Carolina on a $60,000 a year salary. But after they broke up, she couldn't afford to pay rent alone.
To be able to afford that on top of like your student loans, a car payment, it's really hard to function off of anything, I believe, like less than $85K.
According to Real, a record 25.2 million adults under 35 were living with their parents in 2025. That's more than any point on record, including the COVID-19 pandemic peak.
Society as a whole has to respond.
Wharton School of Business professor Susan Wachter has been studying this trend.
It's affordability across the board. It's not just the price of the home and the mortgage.
You ready to show me?
Carly's parents say they welcome the full house. 4 adults, 4 dogs, crossing paths once again.
Carly's 33-year-old brother Kyle was already living at home before his sister arrived, but there is some good news to report. Carly says she has been able to save
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all honor, glory, and praises to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rachaha Kodash. Double honors to the head apostle and elders of Great Millstone who rule well and teach well. This is the brother Mattathiah from the GMS Virginia camp, coming to you through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai. Yahweh being a true, holy, and powerful name of the Heavenly Father. Yahweh Shai being a true, holy, powerful name of his only begotten Son, whom this world ignorantly calls Jesus in Christ. Bahashem is in the name, and Lord willing, this will be an edifying lesson. So more and more people, young adults, are moving back home in with their parents amid affordability crisis. People are no longer able to afford an apartment, a house, and it's almost necessary in Babylon the Great to have a 2-person income, right? This woman said she had to move back in here with her parents, and she was making decent money, $60,000 a year. Okay? And you have a new class of people here in Babylon the Great called the working class homeless. And I want to do a little search in the chat concerning the working class homeless. We're going to read a little bit on this, because now you have a population of people that have jobs, have steady income coming in, have a car note, even may have a degree, some of them even high level degrees that cannot afford rent, cannot afford housing. It says the working homeless described a large, often invisible population of employed individuals and families who maintain jobs, frequently full-time or multiple low-wage positions, yet cannot afford stable housing due to the stark gap between stagnant wages and soaring rental costs. Rental costs are constantly going up, getting higher and higher each month, but the wages that you're getting are relatively the same, and those are relatively low wages, especially when you count all the necessities and all the various different things that you have to pay for outside of rent, right? Outside of your water, your electric, okay? Outside of, things that have to do with your housing. Everything's going up. The price of gas is going up. The price of food is going up. And these companies and these businesses are no longer looking for the amount of employees that we've seen in the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s. You're no longer needed at the workplace. You're no longer needed to work at Kroger. You're no longer needed to work at, your fast food restaurant. You're no longer needed to work at the warehouse. All right? You're no longer needed to be a police officer. You're being replaced by artificial intelligence and robotics all across the board. It says, yet cannot afford stable housing due to the stark gap between stagnant wages and soaring rental costs. Research indicates that roughly 40% to 60% of people experiencing homelessness are actively employed. Look at that. Look at them numbers. All right? Those numbers are staggering. It says researchers indicates that roughly 40% to 60% of people experiencing homelessness are actively employed. So you got people living out their cars, you got people living in tents, you got people, going to stay with their friends, or even in this person's case, going back home to live with their parents, right? With degrees, with a steady income, a steady job experience, okay? Credentials, all that. It says, to understand why working class homelessness has expanded, it helps to look at the structural factors, daily realities, and systematic barriers driving the crisis. Right. Ultimately, we're witnessing the liquidation of Babylon the Great. Okay. And this is what you see, all right, coming from that. And you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, you've been warned, and you other nations have been warned too. We told you, all right, that American dream was all a facade. We told you it was going to get bad out here. We told you the Lord, Yahweh Shem Yahushua, is sending plagues upon this place, and it'll never be great again, right? You got these wicked elites that prompted, these people to believe that, man, if you just vote the right way, you just come together and do this and do that, make the right investments, we can make America great again. America never will be great again, all right? It says the reality of working homelessness, employment statistics, studies constantly show that a significant majority of unhoused adults and sheltered families have regular source of income from formal employment. Common occupations may hold jobs in retail, food service, warehousing, caregiving, gig economy, driving, etc. Basically, your base level jobs to your mid-level jobs, right? It says hidden forms of homelessness. Rather than living on the streets, the working homeless are frequently doubled up on friends' couches, living in cars, or cycling through week to week stays in extended stay motels. Yeah, you'll drive past some of these motels in the city and they'll be packed, and they're not packed from just people coming and going. They're packed from people living there. And you can tell that people are living in these motels and hotels, and even these hotel businesses will put on their billboard a weekly rate, a weekly and monthly rates, okay? Because so a lot of these, especially these motels, they're designatedly set up and established for people to live out of them, and then they make decent money doing it, okay? It says the affordability gap. Local minimum wages in most states fall drastically short of what is required to pay first last security deposit. Yeah, a lot of these, for you to get an apartment, you got to pay the first month's rent, the last month's rent, and some other deposits as well. And people ain't got that, especially when the rent's $2,500, $3,500, $4,500. You got to come up with damn near $10,000, right? It says local minimum wages in most states fall drastically short of what is required to pay first last security deposit and monthly rent for even a basic apartment. Poverty penalties. Being low income is often financially punished. High overdraft fees, predatory payday loans, and inflated weekly hotel rates drain resources faster than traditional monthly budgeting allows. Okay? I also want to read this as well. It says logistical barriers. It says living in a shelter or a car makes maintaining regular hygiene, clean work clothes, stable phone communication, and strict work out. And people are resorting to living in their cars because they're like, okay, I can live out my car. I can save a little bit of money. My bills are going to be paid. You've had people make videos, TikToks, you even have documentaries about people living in their cars, making, taking the back seats out, putting coolers, putting beds in there, and, talking about it really ain't that bad, this, that, and so forth, right? And you see the Donald Trump is trying to make it illegal, and in some states it even is illegal, to live out of your car, and Donald Trump's trying to make, being homeless a punishable offense where you can get detained and thrown in jail or prison. All right. It says, and strict work hours, exceptionally difficult shelters with rigid daytime curfews can directly conflict with evening and night shift employment. All right. So there you have it. People are coming to the realization that American dream that they once thought that they were going to, get the White House with the picket fence, the dog, the family. They were going to retire. They were going to leave some money for their kids. That the last thing on their mind that would happen to them is that they were going to have to move back into with their parents at the age of 35, 40, 45, right? And it's only going to get worse, all right? It's only going to get worse. America has reached its height. It's reached its plateau. Now we're witnessing the decline of Babylon the Great, and then ultimately the destruction. Let's go to Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 1. It says, remember now thy creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. Right? We have given that warning out through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai to you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans to repent, turn back to your true power, Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai, before it's too late. Stop putting all your stock, all your time, all your energy, all your hope in America and the so-called white man, right? Because he's about to get taken out of power, and this place, America, that the majority of our people hold on to so dearly, is about to be destroyed. It says, verse 2, while the sun or the light or the moon or the stars be not darkened, or the clouds return after the rain. It says, in the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few. Are we not witnessing that? Are we not witnessing the grinding becoming fewer and fewer? And soon it's going to reach a particular point that it's going to completely cease. There ain't going to be no jobs. Society as we know is going to drastically change, and basically everything's going to be shut down. Like it speaks about in 2 Ezra, the 15th chapter and the 16th chapter. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. It says, and those that look out the windows be darkened. It says, let's read verse 4 in the King James, and then I want to read in the NLT. This is Ecclesiastes 12 and 4. It says, and the doors shall be shut in the streets when the sound of grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. Verse 4 in the NLT, it says, remember him before the door to life's opportunities is closed. And this woman, this is basically what she's speaking about. She's speaking about the closing of the door, all right? Because that door is closing right now. It's not shut, but it's closing, all right? So she's speaking of the closing of that door swinging to the life's opportunities. All right, it says, remember him before the door to life's opportunities is closed, and the sound of work fades. Now you rise at the first chirping of the bird, but then all their sounds will grow faint. Okay? And, this is, we're looking forward to it, even though we live in these particular places where these particular things affect our lives, affect our household. Ultimately, all right, we know these things must come to pass before Esau Edom is stripped of his power, and America, Babylon the Great, is destroyed, and deliverance takes place, and the kingdom is established. All right, so we're looking forward to these things. Okay, our smiles are these people's frowns. Let's go to Romans, and let's close out on Romans 13. Because people say, well, how could you be happy of all these things happening when you have a job? You got to pay rent. You got to pay bills. You got to pay gas. You got to have a car. You got to have income, right? You got to take care of your family, right? Well, it's because, our mind is elsewhere. We're looking towards a new heaven and a new earth where dwelleth righteousness. To hell with this place, right? Let's go to Romans chapter 13 and 11. And it reads, and that knowing the time, and we fully understand the time through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai. It's in that knowing the time that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. Now's the time to wake out of sleep, Jake. You ain't I got the time that you think you got. You know, Jake had high expectations for America. They thought, well, let me just go get this degree. Let me go to college. You know, we had I remember we was camping in Richmond City a couple years back, and Jake used to always, this one Jake that went to college, we used to camp right near VCU, and he went to VCU, and he would come by every now and then, and one time he came by and we asked him some questions, and he said basically in a nutshell that, you know, he didn't have time for the truth, you know, to come out and teach, to listen, that, and so forth, because of college, you know. So his excuse was college, right? Well, now these college kids, these people that went and got their degree, they're still in student loan debt, are coming to find out they gotta move back in with their parents, that they can't afford rent, right? Or they got a degree and guess what? There ain't no jobs to get, okay? Because artificial intelligence and robotics is taking and replacing you. Or the company is shutting down. The public company can't afford to hire nobody because they're on the verge of bankrupt. Lord willing, this was edifying. I want to give all honor, glory, and praises to Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, Bahashim Rachah HaKodash. Double honors to the head apostle, Nettles, a great millstone, who will well and teach well. To the next time, Shalom.